20th, the time is 6:30 p.m. The topic is comprehensive plan map and zone map amendment to CPZA 23 at 474 North 12th Street. Now, turn it over to our city planner, Jacob Gretchen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for correction, 475.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. So it is now 6:31. This is a legislative land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for a comprehensive plan amendment from light industrial to general residential and a zoning map amendment from light industrial to general residential R5 at 475 North 12th Street. Lots 4, 5, 22, and 23, block 5 of the railroad addition to St. Helens. The applicant is Andrew H. Stamp of Vile Fotheringham LLP on behalf of Wayne Wygant. Because legislative proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we must take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Don't you love this part? Does any member of the council wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias in this matter? Don't see anything. And does anyone from the audience, that includes you,
Yes.
want to object to the ability of a counselor to make a fair decision?
No.
Great. Generally, the order of the proceedings will be as follows: required statements, which I'm doing right now, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by the applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing. The standards for the decision by the council shall be based on St. Helens Municipal Code, section 17.20.120. And all testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable standards as described or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation which you believe applies to the decision. So with all that fun, exciting narrative out of the way, let's talk about why we're here. So I just want to give a history of this property just to give you the context. So this property consists of 4 city lots, and these are 100 by 200, or no, 50 by 100 foot lots. So there's 4 of those together. Here's the zoning map, so you can kind of see the lot pattern around there. And sometime in the early 1900s, so that was platted in 1910. Sometime after, but not too far after, in the early 1900s, a single family dwelling was built somewhat in the middle of those lots, in the middle of that area that says subject property. Looking at some of the past zoning maps, we went as far, our oldest one is 1952, and that identified the property as 2-family residential. Okay, so it was residential at one point. There's a house there, that makes sense. Strangely, and I don't know if it was an error, the 1978 zoning map, which is the first, I would say, modern map, had it half industrial, half residential. Like I said, that was kind of weird. Maybe it was an error. But in any case, from 1980 and onward, it's been entirely light industrial, and that's why it's colored in light gray on this map.
Can we zoom out a little bit so I can see it all?
Zoom out?
Yeah.
If you want to go to the next map, which is the zoning one.
Oh.
Oh, okay, well, the one up above says. Just. So, just to give you an idea of where we're at. This is the transit center right here. So you have Deer Island Road, the city shops just across the street, Oregon Street, Have some residences down here. And this is the area of the old mill site that the transit center did not purchase and develop. You have this residential neighborhood down here, and these two streets, which provide access to the site, have access from, I think it's west or Wyeth here, and nowhere else. These are dead ends. And we have an aerial photo up there too, which we'll show you, just so you have an understanding of generally where we are at. So you can see there's kind of a sea of industrial surrounded by a sea of residential. So as I mentioned, from 1980 on, the entirety of that property was industrial. Fast forward to 2023. Well, Wayne purchased the property in 2022. And he, for some reason, didn't want to move to this residence from where he lives now, and he decided to demo it. So he demoed the property, and he also applied to put an industrial building there. So we went through the initial process to put an industrial building there. We had a lot of discussions about design and stuff like that. And as the year progressed, he had a change of heart and decided, well, you know what? I'm kind of thinking of residential now. And so he applied for this zone change to change it from industrial to residential. Now I want to talk about the mill site because it's kind of related. There was a mill there for a long time. I'm sure many of you know that. It was Friesen, it was Stimson. I don't know when it started, but I just know it's been there for decades and decades. And sometime in the 80s, it didn't look like it was there in 1983. I have an aerial photo on my map, but it does look like there was in 1990. So sometime in the 80s, there was a wall built around the mill site. There's some photos in the staff report, and we'll see it in the aerial photo once we get to that really quick. So a big old tall wall. The mill discontinued as part of the Great Recession around 2008 or 9, and then the transit center was built on the northern 2/3 of the old industrial site. The reason I bring up the mill, like a lot of the places where we have industrial property, is it looks like where our modern zoning has industrial, in many cases, were mill sites at the time. This is no exception. Interestingly, you know, that house, that property with the house on it, you know, retained that industrial zoning, and maybe the mill owned it at the time, and that's why it was zoned industrial. I'm not sure, but we know it's industrial. So what matters? One of the big things we have to consider is our economic opportunities analysis. And you'll hear us talk a lot about this. So at least you won't be like, I don't know what he's talking about. So the economic opportunities analysis, as I mentioned at the work session today, is a tool that we have that analyzes our industrial and commercial lands to determine the adequacy of our employment lands, and of course, tax base as well. In 2008, when we adopted our last analysis, it identified a surplus of 78 acres of industrial property. Since 2008, and if we include this approximately 20,000 square feet of property, the surplus would be down to just under 42 acres. And if we can go to that aerial photo, just the next photo. So this gives you some context. Aerial photo context. And I want to point out where this wall is at. You can see the wall kind of has a horseshoe pattern at the end of 13. And it's actually set back a little bit here. Notice how it's not set back here. For some reason, it was set back in the property from the subject property, and then it continues along there. It is the only known developed property of significance outside of this wall that's zoned industrial. And I think that has some relevance there because on this side of the wall, there's kind of a residential feel. Obviously, on the other side, it's not so residential. Planning Commission took a look at it. And in that hearing, there was no opposition. From a staff standpoint, we didn't get any calls or letters, any comment at all. So there was no opposition there. The Planning Commission unanimously recommends approval of the change. And there is one difference in the staff report that's noteworthy from the Planning Commission to the City Council. And that has to do with Goal 10. And Goal 10 is all about housing. Now, we didn't originally address it because it seemed more pertinent to the economic opportunities analysis, but the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, a nonprofit, one thing they do is they look at these staff reports throughout the state, and their charge is to make sure that jurisdictions are properly addressing Goal 10. And so they contacted us about making sure we addressed it well, and we made sure it was addressed for the council report. We let them see it. It's attached to your report. And I'll just read it so you know that they have been satisfied. This letter is submitted jointly by the Housing Land Advocates and Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Both entities are nonprofit organizations that advocate for land use policies and practices that ensure an adequate and appropriate supply of affordable housing for all Oregonians. Both entities commented on the city's work. Planning staff responded to our initial concerns with insightful and detailed staff Goal 10 findings, which make a strong case for the need for this amendment. This will be used as a good example for other jurisdictions. Good luck with the continuation of this project. So, in other words, they're happy. It's surrounded on 3 sides by residential zoning. The only abutting industrial zone is on the north side. And the streets that access it kind of have a residential feel because other than that industrial property, it's all residential. So for once, I think we have a matter that's not controversial. And it seems like everything points to approving it, although ultimately it is your decision. So really that's all I have. Wayne, you can speak as the applicant now if you wish, but there's nothing obligating you to do that.
Okay. I'm Wayne Wygant, 310 Riverside Drive, St. Helens, Oregon. I acquired this property a little over a year ago and decided after trying to figure out what to do with commercial on the piece of property after some design work and the parking requirements and the setback requirements on the south side of the property, it really squeezed into what I was able to construct. And so I made a decision to revert or request a zone change on it so that we could go to residential. In the meantime, the city has come up with a formula for the construction of residential homes that is, at one point, I thought maybe wasn't going to be accessible to even sewer, and that home had a sewer on it, which is part of why I was trying to do something commercially. But now there's a formula set up where people can build residential and still access the sewer. And so, my request is to change the zone and the comprehensive plan to residential. It's bordered on 3 sides. I've received no objection from any of the neighbors. And, it looks like it would be a positive thing for the city. Any questions?
Is that gonna be R5?
Yes.
It would be zoned R5.
Is the property still walled? Is there still, it doesn't look like it. Okay.
Yeah, the wall,
Back away from.
there's there's the wall on one side. But it's not on the property line. So here's the property line. The wall
see.
is still intact. And it's actually, there's 2 tiers, but yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's photos in the staff report if you really want to dig deep into the details.
This be for 2 houses?
Well, it's 4. I'll let Wayne speak. It's 4 lots.
Well, it's 4 lots, so
There are 4 50 by 100-foot lots.
you're gonna do 4 houses, just out of curiosity.
Well, the zone allows an R5, allows for duplexes, row houses, all kinds of a variety of different things that can be built. I don't have my mindset exactly what will happen, but if the zone change is made, it will be residential.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have nothing.
All right, Jacob, I'll allow you to open up for the public.
I'm guessing that anybody sitting here is not here for the Wayne Wygant zone change.
I've been listening to it online and here, but
Okay, so no public comments.
Okay,
Online.
oh yeah, is there anybody online? Comment? So raise your hand. Seeing any? We will, public hearing is closed.